In the midst of a softly lit venue adorned with white flowers arranged in careful layers and long candles glowing gently on elegantly set round tables, the wedding of Kim Vency unfolded with a sense of intimate grace, and among the guests dressed in simple, formal attire, the quiet presence of Suga from BTS naturally drew attention without being overt, as he arrived without an entourage or fanfare, instead sitting calmly in a black suit with neatly parted hair and a relaxed smile that appeared. When he noticed a little girl carrying flowers down the main aisle toward the couple, and from his understated seat, Suga seemed to enjoy the atmosphere with a forward-leaning posture, his hands resting on his knees, occasionally turning left or right in response to greetings with a subtle nod. And even though there was no formal announcement about his attendance, a few guests recognized him from afar and allowed him the space to enjoy the ceremony undisturbed, reflecting the respectful tone of the event, which prioritized personal connection over spectacle, especially given that this was not a public function or entertainment industry gathering, but rather a heartfelt celebration shared among friends. And as the stage filled with flowers and the soft melodies of live instruments floated through the air, Suga could be seen gently nodding along with the rhythm, occasionally reaching for a glass of water from his table without making any exaggerated movements, and at moments he laughed quietly with two men seated beside him who seemed to be non-celebrities, making the environment feel fluid and genuinely human, far from the often exclusive aura associated with public figures, and from the opposite side of the room, captured unintentionally by a guest's camera. His relaxed expression appeared completely natural, not posed, as if he were truly at ease and present in the moment, unaffected by media attention, especially in a room filled more with personal conversations, soft clinking of cutlery and short bursts of laughter from other tables reacting to small, joyful moments like a child running with a balloon or an elderly couple standing up to give their blessings. And from the left side of the venue, a staff member brought a small tray of pastries to the table where Suga was seated, and he acknowledged the gesture with a polite nod and slight bow, then turned briefly toward the main stage where the couple was now welcoming guests. And although he didn't step up to deliver a personal message or speech, the calm look in his eyes and a smile that lingered for a few seconds gave the impression that he was there not to perform or stand out, but to genuinely honor a social bond he had nurtured outside the spotlight, which is notable considering that not all public figures have the ability to attend personal events without unintentionally becoming the center of attention and maintain their interactions within the natural rhythm of the occasion. And, throughout that time, there were no professional cameras pointed his way, no official photographers framing him into the narrative, reinforcing the sense that Suga was treated simply as a guest who was appreciated but not overexposed. And as the couple approached the cake-cutting moment, some guests began to stand while others took photos from a respectful distance with their phones, and Suga remained seated, occasionally turning to let others pass behind him, then raising a small glass and smiling at someone at the next table who likely knew him personally. And up to that point, there were no fan screams, no chaos, no unnecessary disruptions, no behavior that pulled attention away from the celebration, and everything unfolded as most private weddings do. Quietly, gratefully, with positive energy flowing from one table to the next, while Suga, despite his status as one of the most influential figures in the music world, remained a small but meaningful presence in a day created to celebrate others, not himself. As the evening progressed and the soft golden light of the chandeliers continued to cast a warm hue over the venue, the overall rhythm of the wedding moved into its more relaxed phase, where guests were no longer bound by formal schedules but were instead invited to simply enjoy the atmosphere, share food, and engage in unhurried conversation. And at Suga's table, the shift in energy seemed to bring out an even calmer presence as he leaned back slightly in his chair, occasionally placing his hands together on the table or resting them on his lap while looking around the room with a quiet attentiveness that suggested he was fully present without needing to be the center of anything. And as a group of performers began a short acoustic set from a modest corner stage, Suga remained seated, listening with a neutral but appreciative expression that matched the stillness of other guests around him, creating a shared moment of quiet observation. And when the music faded into polite applause, he joined in briefly, clapping in rhythm with everyone else, before picking up a small dessert plate that had been set in front of him by one of the waitstaff. And though he moved with care and reserved elegance, there was nothing overly formal or stiff about him. He appeared, more than anything, simply comfortable in a space that allowed for distance and calm, and when the bride and groom made a second round of greetings to the tables, walking at a slower pace now and smiling more freely after the formalities of the earlier ceremony, Suga stood up briefly when they approached his side of the room, shaking the groom's hand with both of his and bowing his head lightly to the bride before returning to his seat without drawing any attention to the moment, as the interaction appeared to be quick and familiar, like something that had been arranged or understood without words beforehand, and after they moved on, he returned to sipping from his glass and checking his phone briefly under the table without any signs of urgency, possibly reviewing messages or schedules discreetly before placing it back inside his jacket pocket, and around him, the evening took on a more unstructured feel. Children began to move more freely near the floral displays. Older guests shifted between tables for casual greetings, and soft laughter filled the space in waves, none of it exaggerated or chaotic, just the low and familiar sound of people enjoying a personal event away from the public eye. And in that environment, Suga's presence continued to blend in quietly, with only occasional glances from younger guests or distant murmurs of recognition from tables further back, but nothing that broke the pace or intimacy of the gathering. And near the end of the night, when trays of tea and small glasses of traditional dessert wine were brought out, Suga declined the alcohol with a subtle wave and instead accepted a warm cup with both hands, holding it near his chest as he watched one of the elderly guests give a heartfelt thank you speech at the center of the room. And when that brief speech ended, the soft applause returned once again, marking the close of the evening's final segment. And as people began to gather their things and slowly make their way toward the coat room or entrance, Suga stood up along with everyone else, stretching slightly as he put on his long black coat without assistance, adjusting the collar with both hands before tucking one hand into the pocket and holding a small gift envelope in the other, and he made his way toward the exit, not through the center but around the side of the room, nodding and smiling briefly at a few familiar faces but never stopping to linger, maintaining the same pace and posture he had throughout the evening. And once near the entrance, he handed the envelope discreetly to a staff member who stood beside the guestbook table, bowed politely, and exited the venue without a crowd following or any dramatic gesture, leaving behind only the faint presence of someone who had participated meaningfully in a personal moment without turning it into a performance. And as the rest of the guests slowly filtered out into the cool night air, talking softly among themselves and exchanging rideshare details, the impression left by Suga was not one of spectacle or celebrity, but of quiet presence, thoughtful respect, and a clear understanding of how to be part of something without altering its rhythm. And long after he had gone, the mood he had helped preserve, of calm, of care, of understated gratitude, remained gently within the space, becoming part of the memory not because of who he was, but because of how he chose to be there. And by the time the last of the chairs were being stacked and the final floral arrangements gently moved aside by the event staff, the space began to return to silence, no longer the site of celebration but simply a room that had briefly held something meaningful. And in that quiet transition, those who had attended, including those who had barely noticed Suga's presence and those who quietly appreciated it, carried home different fragments of the evening, whether in photos, conversations, or passing impressions. And while no headlines would be made about his attendance, and no official photos would likely circulate, those few who had witnessed his quiet gestures, his soft claps, and his still posture amid a sea of moving parts would perhaps remember it not as a surprising cameo or celebrity moment, but as a subtle reminder that even in worlds as fast and loud as his, some spaces are entered with intention, respected in full, and left without ever shifting the spotlight away from the people it was meant for.